As days turned into weeks, the transformation in Ada did not go unnoticed among the men of the village. They were utterly mesmerized by her beauty, enchanted by her confident presence. Daily, they would approach her, bringing gifts as tokens of their affection, brightly colored wrappers filled with sweet fruits, beautifully woven baskets, and handcrafted trinkets. "For you, Ada," they would say, their eyes sparkling as they handed her their offerings, hoping to win her heart. At first, Ada was flattered by the attention. Each compliment felt like a warm embrace, and her heart fluttered with excitement. She would smile back, accepting their gifts graciously. Yet, as days passed, an unsettling feeling crept into her heart. "Do they truly like me?" she pondered as she received yet another bouquet of vibrant flowers. "Or do they merely desire what they see before them?" The smiles that greeted her were enchanting, but a gnawing doubt lingered behind them. Was this attention genuine, or simply a reflection of her new appearance? One evening at a village celebration, Ada was surrounded by a group of young men, each vying for her attention. They laughed and chatted, trying to outdo one another with compliments. "Ada, you shine brighter than the stars," one would declare, while another added, "You are the most beautiful flower in our village." As she smiled and engaged in conversation, Ada felt like she was caught in a dazzling whirlwind. The atmosphere was electric, and she briefly enjoyed the attention. All eyes were on her, and she was at the center of it all. But beneath the surface, doubt whispered. Were these compliments carefully chosen, or were they just empty words designed to woo her? Amidst the adoration, a familiar face appeared. It was Chijioke, the man who had once been so kind to her. He stood at a distance, watching the scene unfold with an inscrutable expression. Ada's heart quickened. Memories of their time together flooded her mind, their laughter, their plans, and the sudden heartbreak that had left her in pieces. As the night continued, she noticed Chijioke glance her way. For a moment, their eyes locked, and time seemed to slow as the noise around them faded into the background. A mix of emotions coursed through her: longing, excitement, and unresolved pain. Would he come closer now that she had transformed into someone others admired? But instead of approaching, Chijioke turned away, merging back into the crowd. The realization hit Ada, like a sudden chill in the air. Here she was, the center of attention, yet the one man she had hoped would see her for who she truly was still walked away. Feeling a wave of disappointment wash over her, Ada stepped away from the group, seeking solace in the quiet. She wandered to the edge of the celebration, where the soft glow of lanterns illuminated the night sky. Sitting on a log, she sighed deeply, realizing that despite the gifts and compliments, something was missing. The laughter of the men faded into the background as her heart ached for something more meaningful: connection, understanding, and love that went beyond appearances. As she gazed up at the stars, Ada whispered softly, "What do I truly want?" In that moment, she realized that true beauty lay in being loved for her mind, heart, and spirit, not just her physical form. Resolute, Ada vowed to seek the kind of relationships that dwelled beyond the surface, where love could flourish in authenticity and sincerity. She understood that the attention she received could be fascinating, but it was the genuine connection she longed for that would ultimately fulfill her heart. As the moon cast a silvery glow over the quiet town, Ada's life took a turn that was both enchanting and terrifying. Each night, as she sank into her dreams, the world around her shifted. The air grew heavy with anticipation, and the boundaries between reality and the dream realm blurred. It was in this twilight world that he appeared. The man was an enigma, handsome, with a presence that seemed to absorb the very light around him. His eyes were dark pools of mystery, and his touch, though cold, sent shivers of desire down Ada's spine. "I am from the dark world," he whispered, his breath ghosting over her ear, sending a thrill through her. Every word he spoke seemed to wrap around her like a spell, binding her to him in ways she couldn't comprehend. Their nights together were a dance of shadows and light. Ada found herself caught in a whirlwind of passion and fear. His touch was both a bomb and a poison, igniting her senses while leaving her yearning for more. In his arms, she felt alive, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and terror. He would hold her close, his body a stark contrast of warmth and coolness, his presence both soothing and unsettling. As their nights together became more frequent, Ada began to notice changes in herself. She was no longer the shy, reserved woman she once was. There was a fire within her now, a burning curiosity about the dark world he spoke of. She longed to know more about him, to understand the shadowy realm he came from. But with each question she asked, he would only smile, a sad, knowing smile that spoke of ancient sorrows and untold secrets. One night, after a particularly passionate encounter, Ada lay in his arms, her body still humming with the afterglow. "Why do you come to me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart ache. "Because you called out to me," he replied, his voice a blend of melancholy and longing. "In your dreams, you reached into the darkness, and I answered." His words left her both intrigued and unsettled. She couldn't remember ever calling out to the darkness, but the truth in his eyes was undeniable. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt his lips brush against her forehead, a touch so tender it made her heart clench. The nights turned into a series of stolen moments, each one more intense than the last. Ada's days were a blur of anticipation, her thoughts consumed by him. She found herself counting down the hours until she could see him again, her heart racing with a mix of desire and dread. But with each passing night, a new fear began to creep in. What if he never returned? What if she was left alone, haunted by the memory of his touch? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ada prepared herself for another night of uncertainty. She sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Her heart ached with longing, a pain that only grew with each passing moment. She whispered his name into the night, hoping against hope that he would come to her. And then, he was there, as if he had been summoned by her very soul. He pulled her into his arms, his touch a balm to her aching heart. "You must never doubt," he murmured against her hair. "I will always come to you, as long as you need me." Their nights together were a tapestry of sweet sensation and engagement, woven with threads of passion, mystery, and longing. Each touch, each whispered word, drew them closer together, even as the shadows around them deepened. Ada knew that their time together was fleeting, but in those moments, she was willing to lose herself in the darkness, to embrace the unknown for the chance to be with him. As dawn approached, he would always vanish, leaving her with a bittersweet ache. But Ada held on to the promise of his return, her heart alight with the hope that one day, she might uncover the secrets of the dark world and the man who had stolen her heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Ada walked through the narrow streets with a heavy heart. The whispers and glares from the villagers had become a constant presence in her life. Each day, the women of the village would hurl insults at her, their voices dripping with venom. "Homraka," they would shout, their eyes filled with contempt. Some would go as far as to pour water on her as she passed, a cruel attempt to humiliate her further. Ada's beauty had always been a source of envy among the village women, but now it had become a curse. They accused her of seducing their husbands, of breaking apart their families. The weight of their accusations pressed down on her, making her feel isolated and alone. She tried to ignore their taunts, but the pain of their words cut deep. The village boys, too, had taken notice of Ada. They were drawn to her beauty and the attention she received, but their admiration quickly turned to jealousy. They saw her vulnerability as an opportunity to assert their dominance. In secret, they concocted a plan to lure her into the forest, promising fun and games. Ada, desperate for a moment of respite from the constant abuse, agreed to join them. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew tense. The boys' laughter took on a sinister edge, and Ada's unease grew. When they reached a secluded clearing, the boys' true intentions became clear. They surrounded her, their eyes gleaming with malice. Ada's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the danger she was in. "What's the matter, Ada?" one of the boys sneered. "Aren't you having fun?" His words were laced with mockery, and the others joined in, their laughter echoing through the trees. Ada tried to escape, but they grabbed her, their hands rough and unyielding. They bound her hands and legs, rendering her helpless. The boys took turns tormenting her, their actions fueled by a twisted sense of power. Ada's cries for help went unanswered, her voice swallowed by the dense forest. She felt trapped and humiliated, her spirit crushed by their cruelty. The pain and fear were overwhelming, but what hurt the most was the betrayal. She had trusted them, and they had used that trust against her. As the night wore on, the boys grew tired of their cruel game. They left Ada bound and alone in the forest, her body bruised and her spirit shattered. She lay there, tears streaming down her face, feeling utterly abandoned. The darkness of the forest seemed to close in around her, a reflection of the despair that consumed her heart. Hours passed before Ada found the strength to free herself from her bindings. Her body ached, and her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She stumbled through the forest, her steps unsteady, until she finally emerged into the village. The sight of the familiar streets brought a fresh wave of tears to her eyes. The villagers were still awake, their curiosity piqued by the commotion. As Ada made her way through the streets, their eyes followed her, filled with a mix of pity and disdain. She could hear their whispers, their judgmental words cutting through the night air. "Serves her right," one woman muttered. She brought this on herself. Ada's heart ached with the weight of their condemnation. She wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, but she knew it would fall on deaf ears. The village had already made up its mind about her, and nothing she said would change that. She was an outcast, a pariah in her own home. In the days that followed, Ada withdrew further into herself. She avoided the village as much as possible, seeking solace in the quiet corners of her home. The memories of that night haunted her, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. She felt a deep sense of shame, as if she were somehow to blame for what had happened. But amidst the darkness, there was a flicker of resilience. Ada refused to let the village's cruelty define her. She began to find strength in small acts of defiance, in moments of quiet determination. She would not let them break her spirit, no matter how hard they tried. One evening, as the sun set over the village, Ada stood at the edge of the forest, her heart filled with a newfound resolve. She would face the village's outrage head-on, with her head held high. She would not let their hatred consume her. She was stronger than they knew, and she would prove it. As she walked back into the village, the whispers and glares followed her, but this time, she did not flinch. She met their eyes with a steady gaze, her chin lifted in defiance. She was Ada, and she would not be broken. The atmosphere in the village turned dark and foreboding after the fateful night in the forest. Ada's mistreatment had not gone unnoticed. The spirit from the dark world, who had watched over her with an unwavering gaze, grew furious. This fury manifested in a chilling, unseen force that began to unravel the village's very fabric. It started subtly. A once healthy boy fell ill, his skin paling and his energy sapping away. The villagers dismissed it as a common sickness at first, but as days turned into weeks, the illnesses spread like wildfire. Strong men, known for their resilience, found themselves bedridden with fevers that defied all remedies. Women, once vibrant and lively, were reduced to shadows of their former selves, their eyes filled with fear and confusion. Panic gripped the village as one by one, they succumbed to these mysterious ailments. Whispers of a curse began to circulate among the villagers. They recalled the cruel treatment of Ada and began to fear that their actions had angered forces beyond their understanding. The air grew thick with dread, each breath filled with the weight of impending doom. The deaths started to pile up, more rapidly than anyone could comprehend. Families were torn apart by grief, their cries echoing through the village. The once bustling market square became a place of mourning, as makeshift altars were set up to honor the deceased. The fear of an unknown, malevolent force overshadowed all else. Ada, though aware of the turmoil, kept her distance. She watched from the edges, her heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and vindication. She had never wished for harm to come to her tormentors, but the relentless suffering they had inflicted upon her seemed to have unleashed a power she could neither control nor fully understand. The spirit's wrath was not merely random, it seemed to target those who had wronged Ada most. The boys who had lured her into the forest were among the first to fall gravely ill. Their laughter turned to pitiful moans, their strength sapped by the unseen force. The women who had poured scorn and water upon Ada found their beauty fading, their vitality drained, leaving them withered and weak. As the villagers' fear grew, they sought answers in desperate prayers and ancient rituals, hoping to appease the angered spirit. They offered sacrifices, burning herbs and chanting incantations, but the illnesses persisted, and the deaths continued. Amidst the chaos, Ada felt a flicker of connection with the dark spirit. She could sense its protective rage, a force that had emerged from the shadows to defend her honor. It was as if the spirit had woven an invisible web of retribution around the village, one that could not be undone by mere human hands. In the depth of the night, as the village lay in restless slumber, Ada ventured to the edge of the forest. She stood at the threshold, her heart beating in rhythm with the whispers of the dark world. She did not call out, but she felt the presence of the spirit, its anger still simmering, its watchful gaze upon her. She whispered into the night, a plea for understanding, a request for the spirit's mercy. The villagers were consumed with fear. "We must summon the witch doctor," they shouted, their voices trembling with desperation. The once lively village was now a shadow of its former self, gripped by an unseen terror. The strange illnesses and the spirit's fury had turned their world upside down. The village elders, faces lined with worry, gathered at the community square. The air was thick with tension as they discussed the inexplicable ailments that had befallen their people. Each elder shared stories of the sick and dying, their voices tinged with helplessness. They knew that only the witch doctor, with his ancient wisdom and mystical powers, could save them. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the square, the elders lit the sacred fire. The flames danced and flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to come alive. The villagers watched in hushed anticipation, their hearts pounding in unison. The sound of rhythmic drumming announced the arrival of the witch doctor. He emerged from the forest, his presence both awe-inspiring and intimidating. Dressed in sacred garments adorned with feathers and beads, he moved with a grace that belied his years. His eyes, swelling with wisdom, seemed to pierce through the very souls of those who dared to meet his gaze. The villagers parted to make way for him, their fear turning into a mix of hope and reverence. The witch doctor approached the sacred fire, his movements deliberate and purposeful. He began to chant in a language known only to the ancient spirits, his voice rising and falling in a haunting melody. The air around him seemed to vibrate with power, and the villagers could feel the presence of the spirit world drawing near. As the witch doctor continued his incantations, the flames of the sacred fire grew higher, casting a warm glow over the assembled crowd. He called upon the spirits to guide him, to reveal the source of the village's suffering. The villagers watched in silent awe, their hopes pinned on this man who stood as a bridge between their world and the mystical realm. The witch doctor then produced a bundle of herbs and sacred objects, casting them into the fire. The flames flared brightly, and a thick, fragrant smoke filled the air. The villagers breathed in the smoke, feeling a sense of calm wash over them. The witch doctor raised his hands, his eyes closed in concentration, as he communicated with the spirits. After what felt like an eternity, the witch doctor opened his eyes, and a hush fell over the crowd. "The spirit of the dark world is angry," he declared, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "It is furious at the injustice done to Ada, the one it has chosen to protect. The illnesses and deaths are a manifestation of its rage." He then instructed the villagers to prepare offerings to appease the spirit. They gathered the finest fruits, grains, and ceremonial items, placing them before the sacred fire. The witch doctor led them in a collective prayer, each word a plea for mercy and redemption. As the offerings burned, the smoke spiraled upwards, carrying their prayers to the spirit world. The witch doctor assured the villagers that if they showed true remorse and honored Ada, the spirit might relent. The villagers, now united in their quest for redemption, vowed to change their ways and seek forgiveness for their past transgressions. The night grew darker, but a sense of hope began to permeate the village. Under the witch doctor's guidance, they believed they could mend what had been broken and restore peace to their troubled lives. The witch doctor began his incantations, chanting words that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the forest. The sacred leaves crackled in the fire, releasing tendrils of smoke that swirled around him like ethereal serpents. The villagers watched in tense silence, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, a potent reminder of the ancient rituals being invoked. "The spirit is angry," the witch doctor announced, his voice echoing through the clearing. His eyes, filled with a mystical intensity, surveyed the gathered crowd. "The boys and women have offended Ada. You must call her forth." A collective gasp rippled through the villagers. "Ada," they murmured, their voices tinged with confusion and fear. For so long, they had believed that Ada's beauty was a blessing, a gift bestowed upon her by the heavens. Now, faced with the witch doctor's revelation, they saw it as a curse, a source of their suffering. The elders exchanged troubled glances, their minds grappling with the implications of the witch doctor's words. Could it be true? Had their treatment of Ada awakened the spirit's wrath? The weight of their guilt pressed down on them, a heavy burden they had not anticipated. One of the elders, an elderly woman with wise eyes and a stern demeanor, stepped forward. "We must heed the witch doctor's words," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "Ada has been wronged, and we must make amends. Call her forth." The villagers, still reeling from the witch doctor's pronouncement, hesitated. They had shunned Ada, driven her to the fringes of their community. To call her back now, to seek her forgiveness, seemed an insurmountable task. Yet, they had no choice. The spirit's anger was a force they could not ignore. A group of villagers was sent to find Ada. They made their way through the village, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they approached her home, they felt a sense of trepidation. How would she react? Would she even agree to come back with them? Ada, still haunted by the memories of her ordeal, was surprised to see the villagers at her door. Their faces were filled with a mix of sorrow and shame, a stark contrast to the hostility she had grown accustomed to. The leader of the group, a young woman with tear-filled eyes, stepped forward. "Ada," she began, her voice trembling. "We have wronged you. The witch doctor has revealed that the spirit is angry because of what we did. Please, come back with us. We need your help to make things right." Ada listened in silence, her heart a storm of emotions. She had never imagined that the villagers would seek her out, much less ask for her forgiveness. The pain and humiliation she had endured were still fresh, but so too was the spirit's presence, a constant reminder of the power that washed over her. Taking a deep breath, Ada nodded. "I will come," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "But know this, my return does not erase the past. The spirit will only be appeased if true repentance is shown." The villagers bowed their heads, acknowledging the truth of her words. Together, they made their way back to the clearing where the witch doctor waited. As Ada stepped into the circle of light cast by the sacred fire, the villagers fell silent, their eyes fixed on her. The witch doctor, sensing the weight of the moment, raised his hands. Ada has returned, he proclaimed. Now, we must show our repentance. He instructed the villagers to kneel before Ada, to offer their apologies and seek her forgiveness. One by one, the villagers approached her, their voices filled with regret and sorrow. Ada listened to their words, her heart softening with each sincere apology. Though the wounds of the past could not be undone, the spirit's anger could be quelled by their collective efforts to make amends. As the night deepened, the villagers and Ada stood united, their hearts open to the possibility of forgiveness and healing. The spirit's presence, though still watchful, seemed less menacing, as if it too had felt the power of their genuine remorse. As dusk settled over the village, a hushed silence fell. The villagers gathered in the clearing, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of the sacred fire. Ada stood at the center, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of their gazes bore down on her, a mix of admiration, fear, and expectation. She could feel the tension in the air, a palpable energy that made her skin prickle. The witch doctor, his eyes closed in deep concentration, began his incantations. His voice, low and resonant, seemed to call forth the very spirits of the forest. The leaves crackled under his feet, and the smoke from the fire swirled around him, creating an aura of mystic. Ada watched him, her breath catching in her throat, as she waited for his words. Finally, the witch doctor spoke. "The spirit is angry," he declared, his voice echoing through the clearing. "The boys and women have offended Ada. You must come forth and plead with her." His words hung in the air, a command that could not be ignored. One by one, the boys and women stepped forward. Their faces were etched with guilt and remorse, their eyes avoiding Ada's gaze. They bowed their heads and began to speak, their voices trembling with emotion. "Ada, we have wronged you," one of the women began, her voice breaking. "We are sorry for the pain we have caused. Please, forgive us." The boys, too, expressed their regret. Their eyes, once filled with malice, now held a glimmer of shame. "We were wrong, Ada," one of them admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "We should have protected you, not harmed you. Please, forgive us." Ada listened, her heart a storm of emotions. The pain of their betrayal was still fresh, but their apologies were sincere. She could see the fear and desperation in their eyes, a reflection of the turmoil within her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for what was to come. "The spirit demands an offering," the witch doctor continued. "An appeasing of hearts." His words sent a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. The villagers watched him, their faces a canvas of hope and dread. Then came the shocking declaration. "Ada must drum for the spirit using her breast," the witch doctor announced, his voice unwavering. "For the spirit finds solace in her." Gasps filled the air, a collective intake of breath that underscored the gravity of his words. Ada's heart raced. Could she truly do this? The very thought was both terrifying and overwhelming. She glanced at the villagers, their eyes wide with shock and fear. They looked to her for salvation, for a way to appease the spirit and end their suffering. Drawing upon a strength she didn't know she possessed, Ada stepped forward. She met the witch doctor's gaze, her resolve hardening. If this was the way to bring peace to the village, then she would do it. She would become the vessel through which the spirit could be appeased.